All right, I wanted to show how to do a type of embroidery called Tampunto, which is like a raised stuffed embroidery. And you find it a lot on quilts, but it doesn't have to be done on quilts. The lesson I did with it with a class was for a quilt piece, so that's the one I'm going to use here. Again, as I say, I'm not a quilter. So I put the main fabric in the hoop. I did not put stabilizer because the backing and the stuffing, batting, will work as a stabilizer. So I'm going to float these under the hoop. I could have put them in the hoop, but I find floating it under the hoop works better because most of you don't have a flat hoop like this anyway, but even with a flat hoop, it does work better because it can lay flatter and you don't have problems with it bunching up in areas. So I'm putting it on the underside of the hoop, and I'm just going to flip this over. Ordinarily, I would just leave it up like this and push it under the hoop to float it, so that you would have everything under it nice and flat, and then put the hoop in place. This is the edge of it. That's about where I want it to be. All right, so the first thing it's going to sew is the Tampunto part. That's the raised section, which in this are going to be 2 flowers. And it doesn't matter what the color is, though the color should probably be the same as the background color, which is in this case white, so that's what I'm going to use is white. The flowers are actually going to be done on red, with red, but not until the very end. So I could use red now, but just to show you how it looks, I don't have to add that red color. I can just leave the Tampunto, the raised effect, and it will still look like flowers whether I color it or not. So, all right, so needle down, and the first thing I'm going to sew cut this thread off. Is the flower. There's actually 2 flowers. Now this batting is very thin, excessively thin. I want to say it's about an 1/8 of an inch. I think it's supposed to be 1/4 of an inch, but it looks more like an 1/8. So the Tampunto part is going to have 2 layers of the batting, not 1. The rest of the quilt part will just have 1 layer of batting. So that's why it's sewing this section first. And if you were doing this for a quilt or whatever, you would want to use for this section not an expensive batting. I mean, if your quilt has, because you're going to cut most of it away, you're going to be wasting a lot. You could keep those pieces and use them for another quilt, but you are going to be wasting a lot of batting. Now normally Tampunto is made that you sew the area and then on the back side you make a hole and you stuff it. But again, this is in the hoop. So there won't be any of that. Something just occurred to me, but I should not have put the lining fabric on. I should have just put the stuffing fabric. I'll show you why when it's done, because I'm gonna end up wasting that fabric. I'll have to put another piece of lining on it. It's been so long since I did this, I don't remember all the steps, but so one way it could have been done would be to put the batting and put a piece of mesh, cutaway mesh stabilizer to hold it instead of the backing fabric. I don't have any mesh stabilizer. It's not something I ever use, so I don't have it. I could have used the water-soluble stabilizer, but again, that's expensive and I don't want to waste it. Alright, so it said the two Tampunto areas. It did not do all of this. Why not? Oh well, too late now. Again, sometimes when I copy and paste something, it does not always bring everything over. I need my applique scissors because I have to cut away this. So what I'm going to do is, again, on the back, I'm going to cut away all of this. All both the batting and the backing. Just as if it were an applique. I think I got it all. Right. And then do the other one too. Come on, stay up here. Okay, I think that's everything. Okay, so as I say, this is pretty much waste. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to put anything on it right yet. because I have to do some other embroidery first and then put the backing. All right, so what does it want? Oh, it wants to do, I'm going to skip that. All right, so it wants to do blue. This quilt design I made to be able to do two different ways. So by skipping certain colors, it comes out differently, and I'll do that some other time. I'm just going to show you the basic one right now. All right, so this is just going to sew a cross stitch pattern. Okay, and now it calls for some yellow. it looks like the thread caught, so I'm going to back it up and redo a couple of those. Right there. Oh, come on. Let's do it again. I don't see anything wrong with that. Okay, so let's try this again. These are just some little flower embroideries that go in those bands. light green for leaves. Now you could do all this by hand. It'd take you several hours. Okay, so now we're to the quilting part of this. And so I'm going to use white, match the background. But before I do that, I need to take this off, backing fabric and quilt batting on this. So here's quilt batting. Now this has already been quilted and with batting, so it'll only make that much higher. And let's see. Do this way. I don't think it makes any difference. Pretty much square. Alright, so I'm going to flip this over and pretty much just float the batting and the lining fabric underneath, and threads here that I don't need. I'm going to get my way. So make sure this is still under here. And all right, now thread my quilting thread. which is going to be white. So it probably won't show up. But what it's going to do is it's going to quilt around the whole background, everything except the roses and the ribbons. Okay, so the background quilting is all done. What it's going to do now is just sew a line around the raised edges just to make it sure that it's raised. And in case the quilting didn't get close enough in some areas. See, it needed a line. It needed lines here and here and here and here to make the these lines look more three-dimensional. You can see how puffy the roses are now that there's 2 layers under them, and it will. I mean, I can leave them white like this, but I'm going to do them red. Okay, so use the same red as this one. Now there is some distortion in this rose here from the white that was sewn first to the red that was sewn now. And I think I could take care of that in the future by changing the design that it just sewed the outline of the white instead of all the lines. Because if it's any distortion then in the lines, it would mix in with the background. It's just, but where it comes out in the inside of the rose, you can see those lines, and that would, though it doesn't seem to be a problem on this side, it could have been just because it hit this coming through, and that may have thrown things off a little bit. I think I need to tighten that screw there. But at any rate, changing those lines out to just making it an outside outline instead of going on the inside will fix that distortion problem if it occurs again. I don't remember it happening when I first sewed this years ago, but who knows. Okay, and that's the whole quilt block. And I'm gonna turn this back on. I don't think you really need light there, but this is what the design looks like. This, all the background quilted. The other side looks like this. Again, it's nice. Get this raised effect from the ribbons, and then when you have four blocks put together, you get like a little box in the corner and these ribbons going out, and then the roses would mirror each other, so they end up being 4 roses in each of these big circles. So it's a nice quilt block, and I will put it up with in the free designs if anyone wants it. But you need to have a sewing machine that can sew this, or you can download it and take it to somebody who has a sewing machine and sew it.